now. Good to go. So welcome everyone to this Tuesday afternoon or morning or evening yoga class. So the last two classes where I've been working more one-on-one with all of you, whatever that means, we looked at this very rich sensorial and very real pathway to the body, which is the pathway from the living palpatory sensory foot, which is not a hoof foot. It is a very, very alive, intelligent thing that is constantly pouring information into the spine and letting information pour out. So, and it's part of the expressivity of the body and of the leg. So we looked at foot to leg to pelvis to spine. That was 2 classes ago. And last week we were looking at this rich pathway, which is hand, arm, shoulder, spine. And of course, when you look at the leg and the pelvis, or you sense in yourself, you can see that the leg and the pelvis are built for support, for loading weight, for thrusting, for bouncing. So they're bony and ligamentous in a particular way, and the muscles are strong for all of that. As you come up the body, you start to have more space and longer filaments, and so you continue to have support and containment from the ribs, but actually you start to have a lot more adaptability, and ranges of motion are much bigger than leg or ankle or knee. And so the way the arm is in the human being who stood up on the 2 feet is different from an animal that is much more quadrupedal or bipedal. And again, you can imagine, we felt last time how information pours into the body and into the expression of the upper body, which is a huge cosmos of expression in the human person. The way we move and are with our chest, and how that repercusses up into the face and the position of the head, and then all the expression in the hand and face all work together. So today what I thought we'd do is pour our yoga poses more into the world of the spine. But the spine as an intelligent river, as a liquid resonant medium, which is what it is. We're, mostly water, and so we are resonant beings, rather than a spine which is a stick or a column or a complicated set of vertebrae that is always going wrong and is breakable, because it's not really like that. It's just if we misuse it, or our habits are constantly putting us in places where it's tiring the integrity of the spine, then we run into trouble. But spines get healthy very, very quickly. So that's what we're going to do. But the themes of the last 2 classes and everything we did before will pour into this moment of focus, let's say, on the head to tail, on the antlers to tail, and the river of intelligent aliveness that is there. And just before we dive in, I want to put in your imagination the reality that the trunk has a column or an axis. We could say spine, but I think it's better to say axis or column or river, because there are various aspects to the column or the axis. There is the obvious bony one that goes to the head and down to the tail, and it has its curves. But we have a very real one in the river of organs, or the column of organs. They are dense. They were there before the vertebra, and they're there. So you have a spine and a spine of organs, one of bones and one of organs. 2 columns that work together and support each other. And whenever we breathe or move or reach or speak, they work together to support us. Then we have the column of the back muscles. There are layers, basically 3 big layers. And then the column of all the front support system. So it's interesting. And then these columns are woven together by diagonal and horizontal structures. Down here, it's muscular. Up here, it's partly muscular and partly ribs. So there you can see your spine or your axis in lots of different places. And yoga is always inviting us to move, to do poses and counter poses, to move the place of attention all the time. That's where the richness comes from working like this. And then I've always felt that yoga is adaptable to all the movement practices and all the needs of your daily life. So we don't need to box it in. So you've seen me sitting on a chair. If you got the hint and you have a chair, great. If you haven't, just take a moment to go and get your chair. And so the thing about the chair is that usually chairs are not perfectly made for you. So usually they're a little bit too low or a little bit too high. So for me, this chair is a little bit high and it has a bit of a bucket seat. So I'm just gonna add a bit more. You do the same. So if the chair feels too low, you can put something under your feet. But usually, often, we need to make sure, and therefore often we need to put something under the bum. We need to make sure that the hips are higher than the knees. So the hip axis is higher than the knee axis. If you start to sit like this, you'll be in a funny place, and then all the work we do will have extra strain. If you get the hips higher and you play with it, especially in preparation for meditation, if you meditate on a chair, you can spend a moment looking at TV or reading a book, at another time of the day, and just explore this, because you may find that it's very helpful during the meditation time if you build a base that really supports you, which means that the hip axis has to be higher than the knees. For me, this could be even a little bit more, but okay. So you're sitting, you've done your yoga throne, and so just close your eyes for a moment and just settle. Come into presence as we resonate with the breath, with the surroundings, with the moment of the day, maybe letting something you were doing complete, or putting something aside that you haven't finished or that was bothering you and you need to take care of. So we settle. And usually I feel that as we settle, if we notice this, we realize that we are coming to a sense of weight. Coming to a sense of weight, because we are weight-bearing beings on this world. Yeah. We are weight-bearing beings. Phoros in Greek, phoros. To bear weight, it also means taxes or burdens, on that kind of burden. But when we say Christophoros, the name implies the Christ bearer, or metaphor is the thing that takes you across from one place to another. Metaphor. Phoros, Lucifer, the bearer of the false light. So we are phoric beings, and it is actually an amazing reality. It's a real sacramental part of our embodied selves, that we are heavy, and we nourish each other with our heaviness, with our presence, that I'm really listening to you. You can feel it, that I'm really looking at you, that I'm not flying away. And we say, bear each other's burdens. So here we are. So the weight is a big part of settling, which is a big part of coming near. So just gently moving away from looking at yourself. Although when you practice, if you have a mirror, it's great. You can see, okay, I'm doing head balance and it's all lined up. But then we need to come back. We need to really be in the sensorial river, not just in the visual one or the verbal one. Okay, so here we go. What I'd like you to do is just move your shoulders back, down, forward, up. You can be vigorous or soft. Immediately, I notice it changes my breath. Let them drop. Okay. And now I'm going to move the hips and the legs. So just letting them swing towards and away from each other. So very quickly, I noticed that there is space and there's a sense of ease. I feel creative, there's insight. So it's always like this when we move. It's always like this when we move. It's probably why it's a very good reason if you're having a difficult discussion with someone about something, it might be good just to go for a walk together and walk side by side and talk it through. Sometimes we end up sitting, facing each other at the table, and then we lock in. And then the body is not part of this wonderful process that we're in of trying to resolve something or understand each other. Yeah. So, and now I'm just letting my pelvis rock forward and back. And as I do that, I feel my sit bones. So the sit bones are the bottom of the one side of my pelvic bone, what the anatomists called the innominate bone, the unnameable bone, the bone without name, because it looks like a propeller that's torqued. And 2 classes ago, we talked about the foot being a torqued propeller, very, very similar to the way this bony arch, this bony side of the pelvis is. And we have 2, they meet on the front at the pubic bone, and we've got the sacrum in between. And another time we could look at how the propulsion of the foot is pouring a spiral dynamic up through the pelvis, and so the bony shapes are facilitating this movement, and how the vertebrae pick up the spiral from the way they sit in relation to each other. So if I go all the way back, if I don't have back pain or sacrum pain, I could lean all the way back, I could put my hands on my belly, and I could really let myself lean back off the back of my sit bones. And then I can roll forward, and I can really roll forward, and eventually I've got my elbows on my knees. And I can really let my whole spine hang forward now because of the movement of the pelvis. The pelvis rolls this way, and it brings the spine into this back bend, into extension. And then I could roll back. This time I don't have to go so far back, just play with variation. But I notice as I roll back, mostly my spine wants to follow this way. So it's as if the spine, the column, the river, travels through these pulleys, these spheres, one down here, one up here, and one here. And they roll in relation to each other. It's very beautiful. And of course, they can roll in diagonal and all sorts of things. Yeah, so here I am moving and talking with you all. And hopefully you're doing the same. As I move, I notice places that I know well. I know that my pelvic capacity to roll forward is huge. But I also know that I have this little problem down here. I've had it a very long time. So I can feel it crunchy, and I know it well. I feel perfectly safe moving, but I just let information flow through. You may also have had injuries, or there's discomfort, so you're moving more slowly than me, or whatever. And I can feel there's a crunchy bit, and then there's also a feeling a little higher up of almost like I can't go through with my imagination and my perception. I can't go through. If I touch it, it also doesn't move so much. Yeah. So just like that. Okay. Put your hand, one of your hands on your breastbone, and turn a little bit towards the camera. one hand on your breastbone. You can let your eyes soften. And then the warmth and the weight of the hand helps you to sense where the breastbone is. So in yoga, we would call this a mudra. In contemporary movement terms, we would say that I've created a closed system of bound flow. This is open flow, this is bound flow. And in both, I get information. And I've been doing this since I was a child, because when I came from complete bound flow in the womb out, I was very in union, fusion with the mother, very bound. And then slowly I began to make space, and we look at an arm, but an arm is thousands of hours and days of pushing and pulling, building a world. Yeah. So my hand is on my breastbone, and then I just